Hey everyone, Roman Prokopchuk here, Ukraine News, October 13th, 2022. Russia caused damage to 20 energy facilities over 3 days. Over 70 people killed in Zaporizhzhia by Russian rockets since September 30th. Russia is intensifying efforts to set information conditions to falsely portray Ukraine as a terrorist state to deflect recent calls to designate Russia as a terrorist state. Russian forces may have imported Iranian military to occupied areas in Ukraine to train Russian troops how to use the Shahed 136 drones. Ukrainian troops continue the counteroffensive in Svatove and Kreminna areas. Ukrainian forces are conducting ground attacks in Kherson Oblast. Russian forces conducted ground attacks around Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Russian forces are likely reinforcing the front line in western Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Ukraine's Air Force shoots down 4 Russian helicopters in 18 minutes. Russia's irrecoverable losses in Ukraine are more than 90,000 troops, which include dead, disabled, or AWOL. Another convoy with tanks and trucks heading to Russia was spotted in Belarus. FSB prepare a plan to evacuate families of Russian officers from Ukraine. Russia kidnaps over 500 residents in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Exit from occupied territory almost blocked. More than 120 bodies were exhumed in liberated areas of the Donetsk region. Russia strikes at infrastructure in Sumy Oblast. 2 districts are cut off from the grid. Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, Russians hit energy facilities in Kamianske district. United Nations condemns Russian move to annex parts of Ukraine. So obviously there's been a lot. There's been a lot in terms of the strikes on civilian and infrastructure targets, really, that have overshadowed what the military is doing. So the military has been kind of not affected because these strikes aren't against the military. They're against, obviously, cities, civilians, and infrastructure. So as I mentioned, 28 energy facilities over 3 days have been damaged. And, there's been loss of life all over the country in terms of these rockets and drone attacks. These drones, I believe the Shahed 136 drones that are Iranian made. I think they're a lot cheaper for Russia or anybody else in terms of a source for air attacks, because I believe one drone is around $20,000 or so. But the other thing that actually happened is Ukraine downed 4 Russian helicopters in 18 minutes, which is absurd. It was, I believe, at 8:40 in the morning to 8:58 last morning, which is pretty ridiculous. And that number is actually probably higher because they said they engaged a few other helicopters, but they potentially were damaged behind the front line. So it couldn't been confirmed that they crashed or not. So everything else kind of going on. If there's Iranians on Ukrainian soil, just simply as trainers for these drones and not necessarily directly fighting, it still poses an interesting new point that there's foreign fighters from the Middle East fighting with training Russian troops. And a lot of the mobilized men have made it to the front, a few of which have already surrendered, some of which were only in the country for a handful of days. I believe the shortest amount of time that I've seen somebody that was captured and interviewed was about 2 days or so. And Ukraine is still pushing on Kherson Oblast. There's been a call for Russians to evacuate Kherson Oblast, so that means that Ukraine is encircling and getting fairly close to Kherson for that kind of order to be given out in terms of Russian civilians or Russian sympathizers to leave the city, as a impending battle for the city and potentially in the city in terms of street-to-street fighting may soon be upon us. I believe Ukraine's goal is to take Kherson before the winter months. So hopefully in the next few weeks, the counteroffensive picks up and they have luck to do so. I really appreciate everybody listening. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava, Slava Nazi, Slava Bohu, Heroyam Slava. God bless.